Hey, howdy, hey. Well, we are on to our third night of testing out this Restream. It has some good features. I'm still not completely sold on it. We're going to try it 2 more times, then I'm going to make my decision about whether or not to continue with this. For those that show up for tonight, much appreciated. If you're watching on the YouTube side, greetings. I don't think that you have probably seen me before. I go by the online name of Alaska Jeff. We are over on, well, Alaska Man Jeff. We have been on YouTube before, but for the last year or so, we've been on solely Twitch and Rumble. We're making the journey back over here. Now, the majority of the effort's still going to be put on the other platforms, but we're testing out whether or not there is an interest on the YouTube side. We are late streamers. Those who have appeared at the streams before are usually the night owls. And so we've tried going to an earlier time slot, and it doesn't really work out for the people that we currently have. And besides the fact, the streams that we have are kind of a little bit deeper in some of the things that we cover. As a result, it tends to favor a certain type of audience. So YouTube hasn't really been a good option. And lastly, there's been some problems with YouTube in terms of what we have been able to stream. So if you're watching, welcome and much appreciated for stopping by. Consider liking, consider following, and if you don't like it, feel free to dislike it. That at least tells me you're not a bot. So we're going to be editing this animation and refining it a little bit. We've been doing this the last couple of streams, and we are getting fairly close to being able to render it. It has not been as smooth of a process as I would like, but it's at least been getting better. The goal is to stream a little bit of this as often as I can, and to get back into the rhythm of animating. Animation takes a long time, and I refuse to use AI and other gimmick tools to speed it up. As a result, they take a lot of effort. And also, schedules don't always mean that I have the ability to really do this on a regular basis. I'm trying to fix that. And during this holiday season, I'm going to be leaning heavily into this. So without further ado, I'm going to proceed with this animation. I'm not going to be chatting too much to begin with. We will be focusing primarily on getting as far as we can, as quickly as we can. I said this last night, but Right now I have 4 different chat areas pulled up. One for the Restream and one for each platform. The reason why is because Restream doesn't really share the chat effectively, at least not yet. So it's kind of weird to look over here and see so many chats to have to kind of look at. I don't expect a whole lot of interaction. Again, these are late nights. But I do find it a little interesting, just kind of how many there are to have to try and look at and to double check. assuming that we can get all the animations going at a smooth pace, which might take about 3 months based upon my last experience of trying to get up to speed. It will take about 3 months for everything to be finally back to full production. Now, could it go faster? Absolutely. I've done it before already. But it's not guaranteed to go smoothly. And when we get to the rendering, that's when things are really going to start showing some challenges. Rendering for me has always been a nightmare. And unfortunately, it doesn't get better with more practice. There's so much that can go wrong that you're very much gambling every time you press that button to begin the rendering process. But in particular for those that are on the YouTube side and have no idea what has been going on behind the scenes, I won't go into the full backstory of everything that has been happening. But what I can do is give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect in the future. See, we have, and when I say we, it's kind of out of habit, so it's primarily been just me. But there are some other people that are helping out as well. And so I like to always be remembering to think of that. And so I just collectively always say we, even though in truth it's mostly me. That means if there's something going wrong with me, then everything comes to a standstill. But I wanted to at least say some of the projects that are in the works. There are a lot of different ideas that I've been working on, and we're in the process of actually making them into legit projects, potentially products. It kind of depends on how things shape up over the next few months. But we have about between 10 and 15 stories ready for production. This is animation tests. Yes, they're a minute long. That doesn't count as a story in my book. We have 5-minute stories that are in the works, but to get there, you have to get comfortable with doing a whole lot of shots back to back. And that's why these are not single shots. They're multi-shots in order to better understand some of the challenges that are going into the production. Helps also to figure out how to break things down in a much more logical way. But so we have about 10 to 15 projects that I would say are in an actual workable state. And there are many more on top of that right now are just notes. Simple scripts that don't have storyboards, and I do have a lot of storyboards I've done over this last year, but I haven't until, well, not even now, but I haven't had a whole lot of time to do this. But the goal is that hopefully over the next few months, that will keep getting to be a little bit easier to try and pull off. We will have to wait and see. I have no idea what to expect in terms of actual timeline of production, but at least I'm starting to get a better grasp of how to manage big projects, starting off by small projects like this. Greetings there, Jess. How are you doing? Had a bad headache today and slept pretty much all day. I'm sorry to hear about that, Jess. That I do know a couple of people that are kind of ill right now, so it's not fun doing that, having to deal with that during a holiday. I hope and pray that your headache will disappear very soon. It was Mom's holiday, so she was at work. Wait a minute. My apologies, I think I don't quite understand. Just had a bit of lingering soreness in my neck. I got tension in there and get a runny nose and headache. Ugh. No fun. No fun indeed. Mom is in a CNA. They alternate holidays on and off. Ah, so it was her turn at work. So didn't have plans anyway for the headache to ruin. So she'll be off Christmas, but have to work New Year's Day, which is her birthday. Ah, that makes more sense. That reminds me of when I was working at Amazon or Disney. Very similar sort of thing of where all holidays were blacked out. You were not allowed to take it off. It's a really sketchy business, honestly, Amazon. How they treat people in with their time off or Disney, they both love to give these Black months where you're not allowed to use leave or even call in sick. Or at least that's what it used to be. They might have changed it, but I kind of doubt it. Considering I work on Thursdays, at least I didn't have to work since we closed Thanksgiving, since the bug. That is very nice indeed. I did go to, I did stop by Walmart actually earlier today, and I realized that there was no one there. Fortunately, I didn't need anything in particular, but it was something where I did realize that I had not seen that before. I remember having been able to stop by there before in the past on Thanksgiving before noon, and it was normally open. So to see it already shut down was a little surprising to me. But honestly, I would rather have that happen than have people being forced to work constantly throughout the holiday. In the 2020s, with the restrictions causing people not to be able to do in-store Black Friday like they used to, things have changed. That reminds me of when I was trying to buy stuff in the pandemic. I just did without for a lot of things. I just flat out refused to get stuff if the store wouldn't let me in. There were a few times when I had to break that kind of policy that I had of refusing to give business if I couldn't go in. And when I did have to purchase things from a car and wait for someone to come out and put it in the back of my trunk, I kept thinking, how is this any safer? And what's more, I started realizing kind of just how cold it was. Not because it was Alaska, that's beside the point. But it was, I felt like we were living in a dystopia. And I never bought like that again. I flat out refused. I was like, you know what? Nope, just gonna wait. Wait it out. I know a lot of people that would have said that I was crazy for having an issue with that, but something in me snapped during the pandemic, and I couldn't tolerate that sort of behavior anymore. I was all gung-ho about trying to adhere to the policies that were coming down. I was willing to give it all a try. I didn't necessarily believe in it, but I wanted to at least do my part if it meant to speed things up. Well, as we all know, that's not quite what happened. Things were not slowed down, things did not get resolved, and instead, we all became paranoid of each other. I'm glad that we're no longer in that time, but I also realized that there's probably going to be a time in the future where something similar happens. When it does, I'm going to be very resistant to wanting to follow orders, so to speak, because of how things panned out this time. I know a lot of people where if you were to tell them to kind of, for the betterment of your neighbor, to adhere to a government mandate, I ain't doing that. And I'm not the type of person that wants to be a rebel. I want to do what's right because I came in from a military family, and in the military you adhere to the letter of the law as best as you can. It's better for you and it's better for those around you. But then I saw how people abused it when given unrestrained access to power, and I could never see it again in the same way. So I'll never buy it like that again. I hope that we never lose our newfound civility like we did during those times. Isn't that weird to think? If you were to go back a couple of years, people were treating each other awful. I don't even think a lot of people remember what it was like. A lot of people seem to have already forgotten, but I remember just how hostile people were. And thinking, how is this possible? How have we fallen this far, in this fast of a time frame? Now closed Thanksgiving and closed early on Christmas Eve and closed Christmas Day. That's good. That is indeed good. I'm glad they're doing that. Well, we have, for the first time, done a stream to YouTube, and we will see how it fares. If you're curious as to why we never went back to YouTube after, I believe it was December of last year, that was the last time we gave it a try. It was because, was it December? Wait a minute, maybe it was longer ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago. It was because when we were dealing with YouTube, it always froze on us. And I just got fed up of having to deal with it. So we're like, well, YouTube obviously doesn't like these streams, so we're just going to get rid of it. And we were trying to, because it was me and Rolling Chairs at the time, we were trying to make sure that we avoided copyrights as much as possible, but it still wouldn't take. And I have no idea as to why. But Restream seems to be doing decent, so maybe it was a signal problem. I'm not entirely sure. You know, I think it's probably best this guy gets up again. Let's see here. Won't even make it too complicated. We'll just have him run off like that. Sure about this. Now we're going to go back and start refining things, because we're going to have to refine that scene as well, but we're going to give it a little bit of time to think about it. There's a couple of times when I start to wonder if there are what the outcome of our decisions are. Well, not sometimes. I always think that. What are the consequences, both good and bad? In one of those areas that you could say is a regular moment where I start to think about this is related to how we spend our time. Now, there are some times when our time is well spent by kind of going about in our daily routine and not really thinking too much of it. And it can be useful, it can be good. But how many times do we end up getting surprised by things along the way that cause us to look back and say, you know, there's a very clear line of thought that led me to this scenario, good or bad? And do we start to look for it in the future? Do we start to try and troubleshoot how best to kind of resolve the mystery of our decisions? One of those areas that makes me ponder this is back when I was working on the Lego Island project. Because that was something that was a momentary decision. It was something I did in just the kind of a moment of confusion that I thought, you know, I'm just going to give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? And I leaned into it 110%. When it all kind of came crashing down, though, I was left wondering, what was the point? And for those that don't know, they just nixed people from the project. I was not the only one. They nixed a whole lot of people from the project. But they nixed me earlier on, and it was not because of it. They didn't do it by removing me from the project. They did it by conveniently leaving me out of the project. I'd spent hundreds of hours by that point working on stuff, and this was during the pandemic, so I had an extra amount of effort to give during that time. But then it all stopped. In terms of that, they just didn't have any interest in wanting to kind of work with me at that point moving forward. And I was a bit shocked to find out that, hey, you know, you've been removed. And it made no sense to me. Still doesn't. You take one of your hardest working people and say, you know, we don't want you anymore. But thus raises the question, what was the point of it? What was the fallouts, the good and the bad? Well, I think that a part of it was that I built this entire library of bricks. I started off with a couple of meshes to work with, and then slowly started adding it up. And I have hundreds of bricks at this point. But that would not have happened if I had not been a part of that project. So why did it come to an end? Well, I know why. I found out why, and it's actually kind of tacky. That's why I don't really want to dwell too much on it. It was people that didn't know how to manage. It was people that were didn't understand how to pace a project, and I called them out for it. And I said, here's the plan that that we could actually make this thing a reality, and they didn't want it. They said, well, we don't like that you mentioned about how to do this in a better manner, and they just stopped talking after that point. I would ask for things, and the number of things that I was given became fewer and fewer. But the biggest reason is that they found out as I was making one of the doing one of the items for the project, they came out and kind of realized that I didn't share the same political opinions as them. Yes, it was that. And so I was left in a tough position. Do you try and stay with the project? Or do you kind of let them do their own thing and not harass them? And when they're ready, they can come to you. Well, I chose that path. As a result, I found that they were quite happy with their different agenda, which they were trying to proceed forward, and I did not agree with it, but I wasn't going to condemn them for it or try and become a nuisance in it. I was just like, well, they're going to make their decisions, and I have to realize that this is their project. And thus, I'm not going to get a chance to say what I think needs to happen. The guy that they chose to kind of fill my role was someone who did line up with them politically. And I gotta say, I got kind of irritated by some of the comments that they would say, of where they just assumed everyone shared the same somewhat radical opinions as they shared. But the thing that probably surprised me the most was that they were comfortable thinking ill of somebody without any reason. And they just assumed that obviously everyone else was going to think like them, not realizing that there were people like me that were just holding our tongue, not saying one thing or another. Just saying, you know what? This is their decision. I can't force them to think the way I do. Just have to let it be. I showed back for a rundown of the project, and at first they were kind of glad to see me again. I got some positive feedback. People seemed like they were really starting to come together and find out ways to make the project better. But all the problems that I had seen beforehand, that I had given the warnings about, were all still there. There were no goals. There was no plan. And as such, people were making things that really didn't have any, that weren't really going to help the project find success. Now that's rich for me to probably say, because why was I going to tell them that they needed to change? Well, because I didn't want everybody to get discouraged. And I had seen it happen before, of where people get really excited about a project, it takes too long, and then they all get discouraged and pull back. And I was seeing that happen in real time. So I made my concerns known. Always realize that there will be consequences for your decisions. I said it not trying to hurt them, but I said it with the realization that they were in a very tough bind and things were only going to get harder as time went on. But not everyone will understand that. And rather than hear me trying to encourage them and give them an opportunity to grow and get better, they just immediately assumed that I was somehow trying to sabotage the project, when that could not have been further from the truth. You know, there's a lot of people in this world that behave like that. For better or for worse, they all think that that everybody's out to get them. Everyone's trying to cause them grief and harm, and a lot of people just say, you know what, I've had it, I'm not going to deal with this, and they pull back. Some people do so with animosity in their heart. You don't really know what it's like to be slandered until it's happened to you. Now, I've had that happen to me a couple of times throughout history, and I'm never really, well, I'm no longer overwhelmed by it. But there are some people, they really do have, you could say, a devil in their heart. They don't like anybody. They are angry at the world, not really sure how to escape their pain. And they think that somehow by getting even with people, that's the way to try and solve their problems. Sadly, it doesn't help. And I'm not necessarily saying that, I'm not necessarily saying that with the idea of that somehow I'm better than some of the people I've come across that did behave in that way, because I can actually understand where they're coming from. What I do get concerned about is that people don't know how to escape it, and they don't even seem to try. They're kind of happy with being angry at the world. So what about each one of us? What is the best way to move on from our pain and our grief? I don't know. But I do know a couple of strategies. It's not going to work for every last person, but I do know a couple of things. And one of them is to not find yourself in isolation. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of people fall into isolation. And I think that was a huge problem. It resulted in a lot of people giving into bitterness. And when you're bitter, when you're angry, you're more inclined to want to harm somebody, even if it makes no logical sense. I remember a fella that I got a chance to meet a couple of years ago. And he was in pain. He was emotionally in pain. He was physically in pain. And he was lashing out at many, many people, including people in the group that I was in. Now, interestingly enough, he wasn't lashing out against me for whatever reason. I'm quite grateful, actually. But he was very upset and he didn't know what to do in his anger. And fortunately, I was able to at least hear his story, and one of the things I told him was something along the lines, I won't say word for word because it actually would kind of tell about who it is. But I mentioned to him about the idea that in his anger, he cannot he's not going to escape by lashing out at people. He's not going to escape by trying to get even with people. He escapes when he starts to find forgiveness. Forgiveness for his own soul, as well as him forgiving others. If you can forgive, anger starts to disappear. It takes effort to get to finally disappear entirely. But if you fight to try and escape the dark demons that are haunting you, people will start to notice, and they will be grateful. Now, it's pretty easy, you could say, to give yourself over to bitterness and say, you know what, I don't care what happens to me. I just want to have the feeling of retribution. Well, great. If we all got even, every one of us would be goners. We start to find peace when we finally start to have forgiveness for another. But how do we have forgiveness if we ourselves don't even think that we need forgiven? The more that we try to run away from the more we try and run away from the dark thoughts that we have, the more distant they will start to become, the less frequent they will haunt us. There was a guy that I got to hear recently, relatively recently, in which he told me a story, and he was somebody that is dealing with a lot of dark thoughts. And interestingly enough, a lot of it was starting to materialize in his life. It was materializing, and he didn't like it. It was scaring him. Now, I won't go into what that necessarily means, because it's actually quite dark. But just know that there are ways in which our spirit starts to embrace darkness and starts to invite darkness to continue to fester in us. The devil is wily, and he offers a gift of a feeling of retaliation and retribution. But the moment that we take it, we're also opening ourselves up to his dark ways. And suddenly we start to not quite get the same amount of thrill or enjoyment out of it. And we start thinking terrible thoughts about how we can up the ante and get even more even. There's a moment in the Bible in which, let's see here. Let me quote the verse directly. Where is the Old Testament reference for this? I know the New Testament. Here we go. In the Old Testament, there was the very first murder took place. Cain killed Abel, and sin for the human race suddenly became visible in a way that it had not been before. Cain lashed out, and Abel suffered. But then he said, well, now everyone's going to want to come after me, for the descendants of Adam and Eve were starting to become numerous. And the Lord said, anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. So Cain, despite being an evil man, and despite having slain his own brother, was given divine intervention and divine protection. Despite his sin, God was showing him mercy. And he basically said anyone who harms him will be punished 7 times. But now this is where things get a little bit more interesting. Because later on, there was a guy by the name of Lamech. And Lamech was wronged. And in his bitterness, he went forth and said that if Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech will be avenged 77 times. Or, in other words, he was claiming that his vengeance would be even more detrimental than the Lord's. Vengeance is a never-ending strive to make things worse. But then Christ comes along, and his apostles say, how many times should I forgive my brother? Is 7 times enough? Notice 7 times. Because God was going to protect Cain by punishing anyone else 7 times what they dealt. And Jesus says that you are to forgive them 70 times 7. He just upped it even further and said, you know what? Your spirit needs to change. Do not become so obsessed with vengeance. That is God's position. We, in our sinful state, were forgiven by Christ. And it is our job to go forth and share that mercy with others. Is there a time for retribution? Yeah. But I fear that we become too obsessed with it in our culture. And as a result, we start to think kind of like Lamech. Oh, I'm going to get vengeance. I've heard people say that within the last couple of years. At which point it's like, no, that's completely wrong. What we should be wanting to do is make sure that people have a chance to find restoration. But if we're also concerned about harming one another, it's a never-ending cycle. Some person will want to be avenged 7 times, and the next one 70 times 7. Well, 77 times. And then on top of that, we're supposed to forgive 70 times 7. It's getting increased, and God still says forgiveness is the preferred way that he would have us go about life. So what does this have to do with the way that I started this discussion, which is, well, this rambling. It's not really much of a discussion, it's ramblings. Why is that the case? Well, you could say that there are occasions where people wrong us, and in our frustration, we think, you know what? I know we're supposed to be charitable. I know we're supposed to be kind and loving, but you know what? I really want to get even. And the whole time, we're not really aware of just how detrimental that mindset can be. And we start to become obsessed, bitter, and cruel. The more we try and get even, the worse off our situation will become. So you got to move on. Now, I was a bit frustrated when the project team said, you know what, we don't really want your help anymore. Fine. Guess we'll move on and find something else. But time is never wasted. I mean, it can feel wasted at times, but it's never truly wasted. And so thus, I found a new use for the things that I built, and that is for these shorts. Now, if I had spent all my time in bitterness, would I have ever wanted to try and find something else to do? No. If I was to maintain my bitterness, my anger, that means that I would never have been able to move on. Now, I'm using Legos as the kind of the root of the story, but I want to emphasize that that's like where things begin. There's so many other ways that this comes into play. But this is just good for being able to tell the story. I'm wondering why this is not showing up. Could it be because it is transparent? We'll leave it at that. Bottle's only on for a very short time anyway. But so, with the Lego situation, that was just a fairly benign thing. But I've known people who, for a minor thing, let it color their entire future. It's trivial. It's nothing. But I do know people who have lashed out in that sort of realization that even something as simple as that becomes a point where it eats at them. So how do we escape bitterness? Well, one thing we can do, which is fairly simple, we can choose directly not to seek retaliation. And for me, it's kind of easy. It's like, what's the point in trying to retaliate? It's not gonna change anything. And so I don't really stress about it too much, but I do know people who do like to retaliate. People that are certain that somehow they're going to successfully get back at somebody. And all they have to do is say the right words. They have to be in the right situation. They have to do something just the right way, and then they'll start to feel vindicated for their frustrations and their anger and whatnot. But last I checked, all it does is consume your every waking thought. And you start to find your life being wasted. You're no longer thinking about tomorrow. You're dwelling on the past. Dwelling on the past in such a way that you're unable, physically unable, to move on. So, in that sense, choosing to forgive not only saves you from the evil that is crouching at your door, it also saves you in terms of the life that you're currently living. Would you rather spend the rest of your life trying to harm another? Or would you rather find a new dream, a new passion, a new direction? I would rather, personally, find a new direction. And I've had a lot of things go wrong. A lot of things that I'm like, why does this have to be this way? But I would be a fool to live in endless bitterness. And I do think that there will be eternal consequences if we were to press on with that sort of idea of, with that sort of bitterness in our hearts. Oh, I forgot to rename it. Oops. Okay, going back to the other file. It's easy to give yourself over to bitterness. It takes someone of courage to look at someone and to choose not to lash out. And it does take courage. What it also takes is patience. Things don't change overnight. Sometimes things take months, years to ever change. There was a guy that I was very bitter with. And it took close to 10 years to finally no longer be bitter with him. Now, I could have solved that if I had chosen in my heart to be merciful and to forgive. I probably could have avoided a lot of that bitterness but I had not been wise in the sense that I did not successfully escape that bitterness. I cannot move this. There we go. Huh. Wait a minute. That bottle is way bigger than it should be. We'll solve that in just a moment. So I could have solved that bitterness in probably a few months instead of years. But I wasn't, in my mind, I wasn't ready to let go of that bitterness. Now, as a consequence, it ended up probably causing a lot of opportunities to be missed. There's always a consequence for our actions. And one of them can be something as simple as missing out on friendships. That's something that I kind of learned the hard way. For the stands that you take, you might end up in a very tough situation in which you no longer have the friend group that you once did. And then you get discouraged and you want to lash out even more. Huh. Okay, so it's the right scale in here. Why did it not get properly scaled in the other file? I'm perplexed. By the way, if you're on the YouTube side, I do this quite a lot, of where I get stuck on a thought and I just ramble for an hour plus. So, if you're not too keen on that sort of stuff, my apologies. I do get quite engrossed in some thoughts, and they can be kind of hard for me to kind of start to backtrack. Hopefully you found something interesting in those ramblings. By the way, for those that are watching on our on the YouTube or on the Rumble side, if you consider liking or disliking, that would be much appreciated, because then I at least know that you're not bots. I like knowing that people are genuine. And I have done the number crunching, and I know for a fact that we have over 50% of our views are bots. Over 50. I would dare say on some occasions it's as much as 70 to 80% are bots. Again, it's that size. Is this character A different scale? Ah, he is. That's right, because I wanted him to stand out against the I wanted it to be a different scale for the compared to the Sasquatch. So I messed that up. There we go. Okay, just delete that. Actually, wait a minute. We'll delete this one because this one's actually linked. I put a like on YouTube before I came over here to earn points at 98.2 right now. Much appreciated there, Jess. For those that don't know, we have a series of redeems that we do, which are on the kind of a for people that have been longtime followers. It's something where you can turn your channel points into rewards. Something like, let's say, this very interesting little beaver figurine. There's going to be things like this. There's already a couple of them on there, but there's going to be even more. And we have t-shirts that are in the makings, which we have our screen already good to go, and we have a couple of other screens that are going to be made here once I get the new setup finalized. And we also have some ornaments that we're going to be doing. So for those that do have silver, they have things to look forward to. And it's not actually silver, but I wanted something that sounded a bit more valuable than channel points. And it's something that can be used across all platforms, and that's the real benefit of it. So next year, anyone that wants, well, not anyone, but most people that want to get in on it have that ability. But for right now, we're still just doing our testing of it because I want to make sure the system is faultless before we go to the, well, relatively faultless before we move to the next phase of it. So now I'm going to parent this, keep transforms, and this one is going to be become a bounding box. Oh, wireframe. That works. So we're going to go for another, about another 45 minutes. Just so people have the better idea of the schedule for the evening. So we're going to add in another shot that would probably make it a little bit easier to kind of understand why Sasquatch gets so angry at this hiker. I mean, it's kind of obvious to some people, but it might not be completely clear. So we're going to make this a little bit easier. We're going to have it pan over, and we're going to see a sign. And we will add that sign in to our linked scene, but we're going to start off by having it in here. It's going to be a stand-in, because we're going to have to do this next time. Well, maybe not next time, but I kind of want to refine the rest of this, because we're not done yet. We're just trying to get the refinement of this scene before we close out. And we'll come up with some creative way to convey this in the video, but for right now, we're just going to have some simple text that will make it obvious for when editing. Let's see here. Double check that. It's late, and so thus my spelling is not great. Of course there's two T's. I had it right the first time. Huh. Ow. Right back. You know, it's kind of interesting. Those who have been around for a while will remember that I went down to Costco to get myself a $20 chair. Because the chair that I had beforehand kept squeaking horribly, it was breaking on me. And I finally went out and got a $20 foldable chair. And I was going to get a replacement. And I did. I got 2 replacements. And both of them ended up breaking on me. And so I'm back to the Costco folding chair. And you know what? It has been doing just fine and dandy. It still presses on. Greetings there, EG Wife. How are you doing? Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. How are things up in the middle of the state? I am stuffed and tired. Well, hopefully you had some good time with relatives. I know that, especially after the pandemic, I have had a whole lot more interest in wanting to be around family activities. Especially when you start to realize what it's like to be without it. And I try not to turn down any sort of opportunities to interact with family. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that we dealt with that for so many months and so many years. I'm glad that several people still value Thanksgiving as much as they do. I remember for a time, people were starting to forget it. And starting to kind of, so to speak, move on from it. Fortunately, people have been really embracing Thanksgiving once again, or at least in the circles I've been around. As long as whatever chair you are using is comfortable enough for you to sit that long. I know some, after a time, get either numb or lower back pain. Now, that is actually interesting, Jess, that you mentioned that. When I stopped using office chairs, my back pain disappeared. I know the type of chair I need. And it's, I found it. No, it's not this Costco one. Honestly, I want to swap it out. Maybe this Christmas season I'll do it. But I know the chair. I know the chair that I want. And it is... It's a lobby chair. Like one that you would find at like a business. It's very simple. It's not that high quality, but it's sturdy. and it's a metal frame. And I'm like, I want that. It's stiff. It's got a little bit of fabric. But you know how much it costs? It's like $120 for it. So I've been holding off trying to get that. So I'm going to get it this Christmas season, though. Because this plastic chair has been holding up. But it's plastic. It's not sturdy. And I look forward to upgrading it. Yes, it was a blessed one. We gathered as a community, sang gospel songs, and said what we are thankful for while hanging Christmas ornaments on the tree, and then we ate a big feast. That is delightful. And honestly, I wish there's some people in this world that don't celebrate like that. I wish more people did. Yeah, maybe, just maybe. It's kind of weird. I've gone through so many chairs. I've had... let's see here. I had 1, 2, 3, 4... I think 5. 5 chairs since I've lived up here in Alaska. 5 different chairs. And the Costco one's the most comfy. Figures. But that just goes to show, don't buy the expensive chairs just because they say it's good for you or that it's nice. Get it because you know it's sturdy. And I know the one that I want is sturdy because I've seen it around town. And I know exactly the comfort level of it. So we're going to give it a shot. Yeah, I'm grateful for this community. It is so important to have community. I tell you what, there has been moments when I have wondered if our culture has been so determined to try and get people to stop meeting together. And you know what is interesting is that the Bible tells us why it's important to meet together. And our culture strives like nothing else to try and get us to stop meeting together. Either as families, either as friends, either as communities or churches. They don't want us to meet together. And there's a reason why. Not because society doesn't want it, but because the devil doesn't want us to. And he just does that through people that are in power or people that have influence or any other number of things. I miss the days when I used to be able to go back and talk to neighbors during events like Thanksgiving or whatnot, but I haven't done that in a long time. I don't really know too many people that do that anymore. I would love to get a chance to change that. Maybe one day when I am in a neighborhood where I have that opportunity, I'll be able to do it. We'll see. We'll see. Greetings, Enigmatic. How are you doing? Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving. It was fairly decent for me. It was kind of quiet compared to some other Thanksgivings, but it was still enjoyable. Happy Thanksgiving and God bless. Same to you, Enigmatic. So what is your favorite Thanksgiving tradition? What is it that when you have Thanksgiving that you just think, you know what, I can't wait for the next year to come around? Eating together with our people. That is indeed a positive. Breaking bread with one another is huge. And for whatever reason, it seems so trivial, but yet it's also one of the most important aspects of our society throughout thousands of years. Honestly, cooking and eating together, yes, indeed. Getting a chance to help prepare together, now that's actually pretty nice. Now, I personally have not had a chance really to do that a whole lot. I tend to be more on just the eating side. But getting a chance to lend a hand is a great opportunity. By the way, for just the last reminder for tonight, we are on 3 platforms tonight. We're still testing out the Restream. We are on Rumble. We are on Twitch. And tonight, we're on YouTube as well. And so this one is this setup is what we're going to do for tomorrow during our daytime fortnight. And then in the evening, I'll make the decision about whether or not to stick with Restream. Right now, I'm not certain that I want to stick with it, but I'm going to give it another 24 hours, think about it, and then proceed from there. So we'll see. I remember back when I was a kid, getting a chance to participate in neighborhood functions, and one of them was Thanksgiving dinners. It didn't happen a lot, but I do remember a couple of them, and I remember just how very lively it was, how very different it was from the ones that were just standard family gatherings. And there's something to be said for opening up to a couple of friends as well. Now, I wish I was better at inviting people to events. I'm terrible at doing that. There was a guy a couple of years back where I thought, I really, 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 really wish I had invited him to a Thanksgiving event. The reason why is because he didn't have anybody. And I kind of knew it, but I also didn't. I knew it, but I didn't really want to find out if it was necessarily true or not. And I found out afterwards he had spent a very lonely Thanksgiving. I hope I don't make that mistake again in the future. Now, when I was down at Disney, there were a couple of people that did that were very gracious. And during holidays, since they knew none of us could go back home, they opened up their home, and it became very festive, wonderful events. Some of my favorite meals that I had with other people were at these gatherings. And you know what? They may not have thought that it was much, but it lifted the spirits so much. And I have immense gratitude to their efforts. Have you ever wondered what sort of friendships would have actually happened if you had only asked someone if they would participate in a holiday festivity? I've wondered that. There's a couple times where I wonder how life would have been different if I had been a little braver and just reached out. There's a couple of times where I'm certain life would have probably been very, 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 very different. One of the things I really do hope and pray that I have that ability to help engage the community. To engage the community and actually be able to offer something. Because I try and engage it as much as I can. Sometimes there's a little bit more so than others. It's been a while since I've done that. But I still try and do that when I get the chance. But I don't really have a place I can do hosting. But it would be great to be able to organize things where people go to a destination. I just don't really know what that would be yet. I'm still brainstorming, and I hope to think of something in the future, but we'll see if it actually happens. It's so easy not to reach out to others sometimes. We're just as busy in these modern times. So many things that are vying for our attention and for our time. That is true. That is very true. You know, it's one of the reasons why my phone was ringing off the hook for quite a while, and I was always responding. I don't respond anymore. Not because I'm trying to keep people at a distance. Rather, I'm trying to engage the people that are around me. That's why I try and go out to my local coffee shop whenever I have a day off. I don't want to become isolated. I don't want to not have the opportunity to engage people in conversation. In fact, just yesterday, I saw somebody I've not seen for years. I was actually a little surprised by that. Someone I had not seen for years, and I didn't know what had become of him. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't placed myself out in public. Now, granted, I think that God placed me there, but it's more like he's prompting our hearts. Hey, you should go over there. What's over there? Just wait and see. Then you go over and you're like, wow, who would have known? There was this person that I never thought I really would see again. And here they are. You know, that's happened to me a couple of times. It's actually happened to relatives a couple of times. And you never know quite what God has in store. But by placing yourself in a public area, you're inviting those opportunities to happen. Hopefully we all get more opportunities to do that. But one of the best ways to do it is to engage your local church. And if you are already engaging the local church, then trying to make sure that that community grows. That's so important. And I gotta say, I know a lot of folks that are not too keen on that. They're not necessarily malicious and not wanting to, but it's more like I feel like they're missing out on wonderful opportunities that that God is placing in their lives. And so by putting up those cultural walls around people and saying, you know what, this is outside my comfort zone, you know, I'm just going to say no to this. Oh, you know what, I'm going to say no to this and no to this over here. And you start putting up walls left and right. Now, there are some walls that are put up that you want to tear down, but you don't really know how. I'm not talking about those ones. I'm talking about the walls that we put up of our own free will that end up making life difficult for others, including ourselves. Walls that don't need to be there. One of those terrible walls is technology. Technology is a barrier to engaging people in our modern world. Another thing, earbuds. I mean, it's part of technology, but the number of people that have headphones on or earbuds whenever they're outside, and when you go up to somebody, you can tell the people that are willing to engage you because they'll take one of them out. They're giving you an ear, or at least inviting you to say something. But if you do this, if you put them both in, and keep your head down, in fact, turning your shoulders so that people don't have the opportunity to see you or get in your line of sight, or you even, heaven forbid, face a wall, you're missing out on opportunities that God is probably bringing your way. And I'm not saying that every wall can be so easily torn down, but something like that's so simple. Don't cut off people in your local area or your near vicinity. You never know who is going to be there, who needs an opportunity to talk. And you also hear some amazing stories. I've heard some fascinating ones at the coffee shop, things that I never would have known if I had kept both of my ears plugged. Now, I do sometimes focus like that. I'll put both earbuds in and I will maintain focus, but I'm always willing to look up the moment I recognize somebody or see somebody that's kind of wandering around. Maybe not engaging them necessarily, but being willing to engage if the occasion arises. That is something our culture does not like to do. Why go out? That's expensive. DoorDash it. That's expensive too. Yeah, but I don't like facing people. I'm nervous around meeting people in real life. It's not going to get better if you hide. Life doesn't improve if you don't have other people in it. You can't live in the middle of the woods and be happy. I mean, some people can. Or at least they think they can. You can do that when you are with others. If you're with a family out in the woods, that's completely different than you being out there isolated, alone. I've been dealing with chronic pain for so long and noticed that some people stay out of my way in the city. I have to remind myself not to look angry because I'm not actually mad, I'm just in pain. That's tough, enigmatic, and I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that your chronic pain will subside. I had a friend who has come to deal with a chronic pain, and it has been very detrimental to him. I used to have a look on my face. It was this sort of look. And I'm not even doing it right anymore because I've spent so long trying to break it. But and I would talk in a much more booming voice at the time. What I learned over time is God gave me very expressive eyebrows. Now, not everyone's going to have eyebrows like that, but I realized that just by engaging a little bit of movement in your eyes, adding some inflection to your words can brighten up your approach to different people. And suddenly you go from being somebody that people want to avoid to being somebody that people are like, you know, I wonder, I feel comfortable asking this person a question. And I have been in some scenarios where I'm not somebody that knows the answer, but I've had people come up and ask questions quite a lot, actually. And it's really weird, actually. There's actually a video of me when, I don't think anyone will ever see it because, but I was with some streamers down in Orlando, and I was, they were talking among themselves, and somebody comes up and starts asking for directions. And I look at him, and my Disney days started taking over, and I tried working through all the challenges of trying to help get the person to their destination. And then suddenly the person realized I wasn't an employee. And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You just looked like someone I could ask this question for, and I thought that somehow you worked here." But I have had people ask me questions just out of the blue, and it's kind of strange. But I honestly am grateful for it. But a lot of it comes down to how you present yourself. And yeah, just something as simple as a casual smile or even a half smile can change everything. Trying to find that sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge because sometimes there's other things that are in life that make it difficult. I do know that. I love being out in the woods with family. I enjoy alone time out there, but I'm always happier to go home. Indeed. Indeed. Embracing loved ones is a huge part of this, of what we are supposed to do in this life. And being able to start to invite others into our lives, that's a tough one. But it's still something we're meant to do. I have a lot of friends that I never would have known if they had not reached out. Now, I'm pretty bad at reaching out. I know that. But I know other people have reached out and they've become very good friends. And then I wonder what would happen if I reached out more. It's really difficult, honestly, when you're by yourself to do that, because then you start looking desperate, and then people don't really feel comfortable with that. So I take the other approach, just being kind of like the quiet fella that you know is not going to lash out at you, who will engage you and be a positive voice in your life. I've had that opportunity a couple of times. A couple of times when it counted. And a couple of times when I think there was more going on in that person's life than I realized. And hopefully I was able to contribute even just a little bit to making things a little bit nicer. Who knows? Well, hopefully on Monday, we'll be able to start actually rendering this thing out. This has been many weeks in the making, and way longer than it should have been. But it's been fun. But I really look forward to the next project, next couple of projects, because this one's a project that didn't necessarily get the amount of preparation and planning that I wanted. By the way, for those that are curious, you can find the YouTube channel for the animations and art right here. This is one of the places that we're currently streaming to, and this area, along with the same duplicate one over on Rumble, give me a moment in the process of finishing up the process of bringing this up. Okay, here we go. So these are the two are basically the same channel. Oh, thanks, Jess. You're very fast at that. I was stumbling through trying to get that. But those are the two areas in which I'll be posting these videos when they're all said and done. Twitch, of course, they only last for a few minutes, so to speak. Okay, a few days before they disappear. And by having them on these other platforms, it helps out a whole lot. I see Enigmac has gone over to the YouTube side. Much appreciated. But the YouTube side and the Rumble side is where the final animations are going to be placed. I hope that I'll be able to double the amount of animations next year. When this one is done, that will make 4 animations for that I have done in this year for YouTube. 4. That seems like nothing. And that's correct. It is nothing. But here's the thing. The year beforehand, it was 2. And they were much simpler. We went from... And before that, it was 1 for a year. That's why I have hope that this is going to get a little bit better. I hope. I hope and pray. But by doing this, I'm getting familiar with the whole process. So come January, I'm going to give the next list of projects that are coming out. We have not completed all the projects, but those ones are about ready to go into production, and then I will be making the announcement of the ones that are going to be coming out afterwards. For those that have not heard of this yet, there is a website that I've been building. Well, I had built last year. This is the Castercraft website. And this is where the art and animation is posted, or continues to be posted whenever it comes up. Ah, you had it to the clipboard. That explains it. But this is where this stuff will be posted. And this is going to be the area where the content is going to be primarily housed. You'll be able to come in and see all the videos that have been made. And interestingly enough, you can actually right here, you can see some of the past animations. Boy, I need to fix this. It's taken forever forever for this to load. I need to optimize this website a little bit better. But for the first year, I got one animation, and then the next year I got another, so that was 2. Then I got 2 in 1 year, and that was quite special for me. And then I got 1, 2, 3, and this time it will be, after this one, it'll be 4. So 4 animations. Next year, the goal is to get 8 animations. Almost an animation a month. Castercraft is where this will all be posted. And there's some other projects coming out. And I will be revealing these very soon. But there is way more that is going on over here than I think most people realize. What you see on these streams is a little bit of a taste of the plans that have been going into this. There is a lot of content that I've actually made. Most of it's in the planning phase, though. It's not actually there yet. So, right now, for example, with the animations with these characters, which right now is just called Bunny Hill, that's not going to be the final name. It's going to be something else. But right now, there's 4 animations that are planned out. And notice right here, this one was delayed. This one never came out. Why? Because I was dealing with particle effect problems. So it got delayed. These are going to be coming back, along with some other ones, including one that I really want to do, which is this, with the fish. This is a character, or a series of characters, that I've been planning to use for years. And the benefit to what you can do with this is that these characters can be used for parables. And so I want to be able to utilize these guys in the future. The rigs are already made, and they actually work way better than most of the other rigs that I have. So I'm actually thinking this will turn out pretty well. And this is an old project. Well, I hope to be able to bring it back relatively soon. But these are just the first 3. There is actually a dozen. But I'm not going to introduce those new ones until these ones are established. Slowly but surely getting there, one step at a time. Thanks also, Jess, for posting that. Well, on that note, folks, we have gotten close to this animation being ready. And I dare say this will be done before by the end of the this holiday break. So I look forward to moving on from this one onto the next project. Well, on that note, folks, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you very much for your time. You're most considerate for giving me even just a few minutes of your day. I hope that you were able to take something away from this that's maybe it's just enjoying art. Maybe it's hearing a story. Maybe it's an opportunity to get a chance to even just dialogue with people that are but hopefully you come away with something. And so we will be back tomorrow. We have our daytime Fortnite happening in the middle of the day. We're going to use the Restream to do that once again. So we will be back as well with not on the Castercraft side, but we're going to be on the Alaska Jeff side of things. So thank you for coming by. For those that are on the Twitch side, we're going to find a group to go and raid, and then we will bring things to a close. Of which there are a great many people that are currently out, but not a whole lot that I'm too comfortable with raiding right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, again, go with Havid Fair, who is a good fella over in Europe. So have a very pleasant evening and morning, everybody. Just a reminder, be civil to one another. I hope that you had a very pleasant and wonderful Thanksgiving with you and yours. And we will see you all next time. Until the next time, folks, have a very pleasant evening.
This rat cult spreads through Gotham like a plague.
Starting the raid.
I have to stop it. Even if it comes...
Alright, heading on over there in 10 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. And to the rest of you that are out there, thank you for your time. We'll see you all in the morrow, hopefully.